of the program. Now, in light of what transpired today during the Azimio demonstrations, the Media Council of Kenya has released a statement, of course, with regards to what happened to the members of the media, their attacks and harassment. I'm going to just read out a part of the statement which says that the Media Council of Kenya strongly condemns attacks on journalists covering the ongoing protests. We have received reports of violent physical attacks on media personnel, including the destruction of their equipment and information collected. Some journalists have also lost their valuables. We also have reports of journalists being attacked by goons participating in the demos and by law enforcement officers who are supposed to provide security. Cannot be tolerated. Police officers attacking journalists undermines press freedom, limits the public's access to information, violates human rights and can cause physical or psychological harm. Lastly, goes on to say it is essential that journalists are able to carry out their work without fear or violence or harassment, and that law enforcement agencies are held accountable for any kind of actions that violate their rights or impede their ability to report on events. They finally just says the council is monitoring and will work closely with law enforcement agencies to ensure that those responsible for the attacks are held accountable for their actions and for measures to be taken to prevent such incidents from happening in the future. Now, this is just a statement that was released by the Media Council of Kenya. And Dan Mwangi is having a sit down with a couple of journalists from the Nation Media Group who are on the ground just covering the demonstrations, who are also part of those who are harassed in one way or the other. Dan, what do we have?
Thank you very much, Zainab. And as we had said earlier on, that we shall be having this discussion, which we are calling the debrief, because ordinarily in the newsroom, we have when reporters come from the field, they come and debrief to agree on what happens and giving us the details. But even as we get into that, we are going to be listening to a story by Vincent Oduor, who was also on the ground, which is about various journalists who are attacked, and some of whom are seated here with us, including those from the Nation Media Group, as well as Citizen TV and African Censored, among others. This is the story that Vincent has put together.
Monday's opposition protests against the Kenya Kwanza government in the city turned into a day of attacks and hostility against local and foreign journalists covering the demonstrations. In Kibera, protesters pelted journalists with stones, accusing them of taking their photos to supply the Directorate of Criminal Investigations for their prosecution. The battery of journalists scampered for safety amid a hail of stones, jumped into their cars and drove off. However, the protesters managed to steal a camera and a mobile phone from one of the journalists. Several cars used by the journalists were damaged. On the other side of the slum, some journalists were chased by machete-wielding youth. During the protest, there were incidents where police tear-gassed several journalists indiscriminately. The same was witnessed in different parts of the city, where police deliberately lobbed tear gas and used water cannons against cameramen capturing the events from on top of their cars. For the better part of the day, journalists had to play hide and seek from both the police and the protesters. 2 unlucky journalists were arrested by the police but later released, even as others lost their phones. Kenya Editors Guild has condemned the attacks and demanded journalists to be allowed to do their work without interference of police. The Guild has termed the attacks as an assault against freedom of the media and the constitutional order, which stands as the bedrock of our democracy and the civilized state. The Media Council of Kenya has condemned the attack and termed it as a self-defeating. MCK says demonstrators attacking the media demean the spirit of mass action as it betrays the foundation of democracy on which it is founded. Vincent Oduor, NTV.
That sets the stage for us for the debrief, and we begin by introducing my colleagues. It's really odd when we have it this way. We have Ibrahim Karanja, Ngina Kirore, and Justus Ocheng. And thank you for the work you're doing, guys. And just to get into it, I'll begin with you, Ibrahim. It's been a long day, but what are some of the highlights for you, some of which may be lowlights as well?
The highlights for me, I think in this particular life we say, I think all of it is a highlight, would be the moment we saw, police officers or security officers trying to stop the demonstrators from going to wherever it is that they were heading to. Because each and every time this would happen, it would not happen in a peaceful way. It would involve lobbing tear gas canisters on people. It would also involve stones being thrown from the other end. So for me, and seeing everyone, sort of the people try to defy the police are still maintaining their ground. These are things that I will live to remember long after I have left this career, because it is people putting themselves, let me say, at risk. Because at any one time, when you leave the newsroom to cover such protests, you are not sure how you will come back. We have seen our colleagues get injured, rush to the hospital, then back to the field. Others get injured and not able to go back to the field.
Okay.
So how complex this situation is something that will remain in my mind for so long.
Okay, and I want to bring in Gina, and Gina is among the journalists who have, should I say, been rescued this evening, just this evening, because you were stuck in Kibera. Maybe just paint for us a picture of what exactly happened.
So we actually just got back to the office about half an hour ago or thereabout. So what had happened is we had just come from the Kamkunji grounds where ODM leader Raila Odinga was giving his speech, and afterwards he proceeded to leave the grounds, and where he was going was a very steep hill. So as he was climbing up the hill, all the cars were following him, including us, so that we could exit and come back to Nairobi and file our story. We thought it was just going to be an easy ride. But once we reached up the hill, the car was carrying too much weight because of the amount of people that were on it. So
these people are
protesters.
Okay.
And I'm not very sure if the police maybe thought that, we're part of the convoy, but the tear gas started coming now in our direction. So it overwhelmed us a bit, and we were unable now to move forward because of the weight that the car was carrying. And then other mechanical issues took place, and we were forced to pull over and actually run out because stones were coming, tear gas was coming. Who else knew what was coming? So our driver and our colleague, Samuel Mbao, told us to just get out and hide somewhere so that we could just take shelter because it was not safe and the car had stalled. So we stayed there until around 8 p.m. alongside my colleague Justus.
Justus, what was your experience from where you sat?
Today I can describe it as having found myself between a rock and a hard place, because as the police fired tear gas inside the car that we were in, we were forced now to scamper for safety, and we could not advance towards the police because they were charging at the crowd and they were firing towards the crowd, so we had to go back to the informal settlement there. Apparently, I cannot. I don't think whether it was right maybe for the police to begin the attack because the rally had already been concluded. Mr. Odinga had already addressed the gathering, and people were now living peacefully. So apparently, after his vehicles, his entourage left the estate, that's when the attack began. So I think the freedom of the media is guaranteed in our constitution under Article 34, and each and every side is supposed to have a compromise so that journalists can have a free will to operate freely as per the dictates of our constitution.
Did you get any injuries by that when you're saying the stones were coming and the tear gas?
No, we were lucky to enter into a local church where we took refuge. The stones did not hit us, but I can say that we suffered from the effects of the tear gas of the police, and we were there for nearly 2-3 hours, from 5 until around 8. That's when we were picked from that place.
Okay, and Ibrahim, I know you're in the other team. You're in a different vehicle from them, and you saw their vehicle as it was stalling. What did you see?
That moment was shocking. Initially, I remember I was actually live giving an update, a phone link on what I was seeing at that particular time. And we were in a place called Lindi. This is in Kibera constituency, and just making our way out of Kibera and join the main road. And at that particular point, I am seeing this vehicle. It had not registered in my mind that this is actually a Nation Media Group vehicle. I'm seeing this vehicle with lots of people at the carrier or behind the pickup, and it's unable to take or to go through a very, very steep junction. So how it is, it's so steep. Then at the top of the hill is a junction that one heads left and another one heads right. Then right above it is a bridge in which the police were standing and lobbing tear gas to the people. You see, they are at a vantage point, so they are seeing this vehicle stalling, and tear gas, not necessarily to the media, but also to the people who are around, because you're seeing this is a vehicle that has people who we do not know just hop onto our vehicles, and that makes us as targets. I saw this vehicle now in an attempt to climb up the hill. It reversed, not once, not twice, actually 3 times, to almost hitting our vehicle. Now, this is at a point where you wonder, as a journalist, do I step out of the vehicle and run? But then again, where am I running to? I don't know this area. Even if I stepped out and ran towards the police because I perceive that to be the safer area, the police might think I'm another protester charging at them. So who knows how they would have reacted to that. So you're sitting in a vehicle where every other time is those sounds of either stones hitting your vehicle or tear gas canisters hitting your vehicle, and it hits you that these are your colleagues, and you're telling these people who are hanging on the pickup, guys, get off, we need to drive, and they are not.
And Ngina, this was the vehicle that you guys had. Some of these people who are on the pickup, at the back of the pickup, actually, I believe, hopped on from Kawangware.
All the way from Kawangware.
From Kawangware. So by the time the back screen was broken and the car is struggling to go up the hill, what was it like?
It was absolutely terrible, because initially when the car was hit with a stone at the back, it broke the glass all over us who are sitting at the back. In fact, Justus and I were sitting on glass the entire time that we were heading to our next destination. Then what happened next is that anytime that tear gas was thrown, it permeated so easily within the car because there are so many loopholes. So there's the back window that's open. Now we've flung our doors open so that we can run out. And then the weight, because that vehicle is not designed to carry that amount of weight. And we're literally begging these guys, please get off the car so that we can proceed up the hill. Then even if you want to proceed with us onwards, it's fine, but let us get up the hill. And they completely refused. And I should add, on the issue of injuries, our driver sustained a cut on his eye because of the broken glass from the tear gas canister that was shot at one of our car at one of the junctions at Kawangware.
Okay, and just in closing, Justus, maybe you could tell us then, how did you guys get just evacuated from that place? Because you said you took refuge at a small church there and you had to wait until some kind of assistance came. Maybe just briefly tell us how that happened.
Yeah, because the vehicle had stalled, we first had to reach out to the local youth there to assist us to push the vehicle towards a local hospital. I think it's Kibera South dispensary, where we had to ensure first the vehicle was kept safely there. And then we reached the office. Apparently the driver who was sent to us could not access the church because the road leading to the church was barricaded by the police. So we had to reach out to the politicians also who are involved in that protest. So personally, I called the ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna and asked now we found ourselves in a very big problem here. Our people cannot access us here. How do we leave this place? Luckily enough, he sent to us some of the youth who stay in that in the estate. They helped us with they hired for us the motorbike that took us up to Kabrak around DC's place. That's where we found our driver, and that's how we found ourselves back to the office.
All right, I'm really glad you guys are all safe. And because I'm not allowed to ask you questions to respond, if you could just, by a show of hands, how many will cover Thursday's Mandamano? Good. All the best, guys. Thank you very much for your brave work, and Pole for the experiences, some of which are potentially traumatizing. but we pray that you have that peace. And also remembering that the Nation Media Group provides the free psychosocial services with various partners, so we could always have that kind of therapy going on. We cross over to the other side of the studio where Zainab Ismail is standing by with the sports news.